Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast. Heart of Dad is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their families and business and looking to find more clarity, more balance and more alignment in all areas of their life. Come and join the community at heartofdad.com or on Facebook at groups/Heart of Dad. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm interviewing Martin Morrison. Martin is a ghostwriter, editor, speaker and coach who specialises in mindset transformation, mental programming and helping others discover how to live a more purposeful life. His slogan is "Express your truth with clarity," and Martin ensures he's expressing his truth clearly in everything that he says or does. Martin's own physically and emotionally violent childhood taught him that we all face challenges whether we close up into a ball or go out fighting. He chose to take the bull by the horns and live his life as authentically as possible. It would be decades before Martin finally managed to clear out all the negative programs implanted into his mind as a child, the subconscious self-loathing, but once he began his own journey of mindset transformation, the effect it had on his own life was profound, and now he helps others to do the same. Hi, and this week on the Heart of Dad podcast, I'm delighted to welcome Martin Morrison. Hi, Martin.
Hello, Matt. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the week.
I am, thank you very much. So, Martin, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've made a decision a number of years ago to go self-employed because I'm a single father. My youngest son, who's now 12, lives with me. And I felt as though being in full-time work was sucking the life out of me. I was made redundant and used that as an opportunity to restart my life. And after a couple of years of sort of not really being too sure what I was going to do, dabbling in different things, I started to find my feet. And these days, I'm a professional writer, ghostwriter and editor, but I also coach people individually and within groups. And that's moving me towards a speaking career, i.e. keynotes, as opposed to seminars and workshops. And I'm also a radio presenter. In my spare time, I enjoy writing scripts. That's something I'm taking a lot more seriously now. Screenwriting, radio plays. I love music. And recently I've got into Bollywood acting.
Fantastic.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
It feels like there should almost be a podcast just on that topic. That sounds really interesting.
Well, I used to be a salesman, Matt, so I'll always make things sound even better than they are.
Well, you've already got me sold on that one. I'm picturing it as we speak. So, Martin, this podcast is really about that intersection you've already spoken about, which is about being a dad and also running your own business. And it sounds like life circumstances pushed you in that direction. Redundancy is always a tough moment for people, I guess. But I'm curious how you sort of made that adjustment from being employed into self-employment and how that's played out for you.
Okay, well, before I became a parent, it was the year 2000 when I was 30. And interestingly enough, by the way, I'm just going to add this for anybody who's into visualizations. With my birthday coming, my 30th birthday coming at such a key time in human history, the year 2000, I'd often wondered what will I be doing in a year 2000 when I was like a small boy. And I just visualized that I would have a terraced house like the one we grew up in, and this one is virtually exactly the same, that I would be a father, a husband, or near as damn it, not everyone gets married these days, and be driving a car, probably with one or two kids, not the 7 that my dad had. And well, that's pretty much what happened. In 2000, I got the driving license. Halfway through 99, I got the house. I met my wife in 99 as well, or my to-be wife. And, we were cohabiting with children and a car in the year 2000. But what had always also happened at that time, which happens to a lot of people, I think, was this realization that, wow, I've now been in the real world, so to speak, as an adult for 12 years. And despite the time I'd spent as a university student and, living the life of Riley, it still felt like a hell of a long time to be in the world working. And there's another 30 or 40 years to go kind of thing. I'm like, what the hell is this all about? And I used to, say to my then partner, look, maybe we're just being robbed. Maybe we're being ripped off. She wasn't happy in her full-time job. I was starting to feel as though my career in advertising had peaked, and I wasn't very happy with where it was going. And I was saying to her, maybe we're better off being self-employed. But as happens, my first son was born in the year 2000, and so you get wrapped up in being a father and a husband. Work became very challenging. So I kind of got sucked in. And so it was still quite a few years before I left employment. But to get back to the nitty gritty of your question, I mean, I've given you something, a little bit of the psychology that was leading me towards eventually finding my own way. But how did that look practically? Well, around by 2000, I was in advertising sales. I was a tenacious person. But in the early noughties, I'd started to teach people one-to-one with martial arts. I realized that some of the stuff that I'd figured out years before, a unique attitude to teaching martial arts weapons as a route to mindfulness training, was good enough for me to be teaching people individually and coaching them one-to-one. So I started to do that, and I had one or two key students, and that's a good feeling when you've got people who are paying you for your time and expertise and putting faith in you. It helps you to believe in yourself. Secondly, it started to become clear to me that I was quite talented as a writer. I'm a university dropout. Although I did English literature at A level, it was psychology I'd studied at university. So, when you're in advertising, particularly in newspapers, if you're not aware, I'll tell you now, there's a kind of them and us between the advertising department and commercial departments and the people who work in editorial. They can be a bit snooty. So again, there was nothing there to say to me, oh, you should be a writer. You have that privilege. The way it happened was quite fluky, really. I would be so keen to get advertising clients on board that I would sell them these advertorial deals where they had an advert plus some adjacent editorial text, which could not be a direct sell. It had to be something that informed, influenced, and sort of generated interest in their product, so that, lo and behold, hey, we just happen to be advertising right here. You can come to us. So in doing that, that would mean me having to ask a journalist, the commercial journalist, if they could write the copy. Well, as is always the case, you tend to get your best deals right on deadline because you can knock the price down a little bit. You can use that as leverage to get the sale. And, as you can expect, sometimes the journalist wouldn't play ball. So guess who ended up writing the editorial? I did. And I sat there and I thought, these journalists aren't cottoning on to it to me. So we had a new commercial manager, somebody who I'm still in touch with, a commercial editor, sorry. And I got in touch with her one day and I said, Suze, the editorial that I sent up for XYZ client, what did you think of it? Oh, I thought it was really good. Did it look like it had come from a professional agency? She said, yeah. Why are you asking? I said, well, it was me. Do you think I can cut it as a writer? And she was saying, it's great. Yeah, no problem at all. So I then started to write more regularly for clients. And then I found clients outside of work who I was helping with PR, press releases, website copy, and things evolved from there. So there was two elements to what I now do going off at the same time: teaching martial arts, one-to-one, and writing. And then finally, I ended up being the head of weapons for a large martial arts organization in Yorkshire. And I was now getting the credibility and the recognition as having something new to offer that wasn't traditional. It was more of an approach. So I don't know if your other questions are going to help me to give you more on that. I could carry on with that, but I'm
No,
going to
that's
pass it.
perfect. I think it's already, there's so many kind of lovely bits of fruit in what you shared that we could dive into. But I'm going to carry on a little bit on the dad path for a moment, and
Yeah,
sort of having heard that history. And so you had your first child went in 2000, and then you had your son, I think in 2007. It must be, he's 12. Right?
I've got a few. Let me
Yeah.
dive in and explain a little bit about the children's situation in parallel, because what I didn't really talk about through the noughties there was the demands that were being made on me, and psychologically, really. So 2000, my first son was born. Then my daughter was born in 2003. But me and my wife's relationship had completely broken down 4 months earlier. So I went from being a married man in a house with a child and one on the way to being a single dad with, a 3-year-old boy and a 2-week-old daughter staying with me 4 nights a week as a single dad overnight. And it was very challenging. It wasn't every night. I'm sorry. It was 4 nights a week. So Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I had my children with me. And I thought I was doing the right thing because they were spending time with me. But as they got older and the demands of work and financial pressures and not knowing where I was going with my career, and also, as I say, doing this work on the side just to keep my head above water, meant that, let's just say retrospectively, I don't think I was the most loving parent. I was a practical parent, but I wasn't very nice to be around. I was depressed. I was fearful, anxious. I was on medication. And more than that, I felt pressured to get another person in my life with children, because I increasingly felt that when my children went to their mother's house, she had settled with somebody else, she had stepchildren. So they were all playing happy families. And I felt as though I was losing my children, that my children were very happy when they were with her, but when they were coming to mine, that was the downside of the week. And as the older they got, the more it felt like I was the second-class parent. So I then met somebody who had 2 children, a boy and a girl like me, and thought, this is going to be great. But as you'll know, Matt, basing a relationship on what you think is practical, as opposed to whether or not there's a genuine loving connection and compatibility there, it's not always a good idea, just trying to force these things. And that person, much as I still do love her and wish her the best and have an amicable relationship with her, we weren't suited. So I was from the frying pan into the fire, because I did 3 years as a single parent to my 2 eldest children, and then met the mother of my youngest child around 2005. And by 2007, he was then born. And that relationship didn't work out. So by 2009, I was now a single dad of 3 children by 2 different mothers. And, one's living here, one mother's living there. One child's seeing me on these days, the other children are seeing me on these days, and I'm still hating my job, and I'm still floating, just about keeping my head above water. It was a pretty difficult time, and there was
How
a
did you
couple of
cope?
occasions.
Can I ask
How
you,
did
Martin, how did you cope through that period?
I? As you know, I'm a former alcoholic. I say former, I'm an alcoholic. I hate saying that, but yes, I'm an alcoholic, a dry one. So 1999, before I'd met my ex-wife, I'd packed in the drinking. What I found was, because I resolved the initial cause of that problem, which was my childhood, an abusive childhood, drinking never really became a problem again. So after a 9-month stint of sobriety, I would sometimes drink, but it never became a problem. Just socially, going out on the rise and all the rest of it. With the commitments that I had, children all the time, driving, I just couldn't drink, and I couldn't do with the hangovers. So drinking became less and less of a way of coping. Meditation was how I coped. Meditation. And I'd say actually I looked for the wrong coping mechanisms. I thought that if only I could find the right partner, things would go well. So I'd say that I was working from a position of lacking. I had a lacking mentality. If only I can get more money, if only I can have a job that I like, if only I can get that promotion, if only I can have a partner, and really dreaming about things getting better and having faith that things were going to be okay in the future. But as one of my guests said on my radio show yesterday, he said, you show me a point or place in your diary that says one day. Because how many of us say one day this will happen, one day I'll do this? Well, that's where I was. I was in one day territory. So ask me how I'm coping or how I did cope. Blind faith, Matt, blind faith. And it wasn't working, because on a number of occasions, I just ended up having a complete breakdown. And if you've ever had a if you've ever had a breakdown, or anyone listening to this has had a breakdown, you're not always aware that it's coming. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples on this. We think of depression as feeling down, of going around miserable with a long face and saying, I'm so upset. It doesn't always work that way. Sometimes you're so determined to get on, you just do what you've got to do. And I'm going to give you 2 examples of where I didn't see it coming. One was when, this was actually after I got made redundant, 2012, 2013. I was getting up, I was coming downstairs, and I was watching Jeremy Kyle. I don't recommend daytime TV to anybody. And I definitely don't recommend those sort of programs. But I started to notice that as soon as I'd had my breakfast, I was getting terrible indigestion, and it was getting worse. Then I started to wake up in the night with indigestion. And then I was waking up hungry. And then I was coming down and eating breakfast to go back to bed. And then I was going downstairs, getting breakfast, going back to bed, and still not going to sleep. And then these feelings of anxiety and all the rest of it. And then I clicked. This is depression. Went to the GP. This doesn't work for everybody, but I knew that with me, there was a very strong neurochemical factor in my depression. Took the antidepressants, SSRIs, serotonin synaptic reuptake inhibitors, and they worked very quickly within 3 weeks. The second time it happened to me, when I didn't see it coming, was because my son, who's extremely allergic, my youngest son, he gets the most unbelievably weird rashes all over his body when you least expect it. He's got like a nut allergy, you name it, he's allergic to stuff. And he started to get these bizarre, what looked like groups of bites on the back of his neck. And I was writing for a pest controller, and I was doing research as part of that on everything from bed bugs to you name it. And one of the things about bed bugs is they really lend themselves to paranoia, because if you're unlucky enough to get bed bugs, it'll be a long time. You'd have to be absolutely riddled with them before you actually see them. What you get is signs, strange rashes on your skin, strange markings on your sheets. So I started to become obsessed with bed bugs. And before you knew it, I wasn't going to bed till 2:30, and I was doing all kinds of checks. I'm going in my son's room, turning on the lights in the middle of the night, doing quick checks to see if I could find them, until one day I realized, Martin, you are as mad as a hatter. Went to the GP, broke down trying to explain to them how I was feeling. They stopped me after a few minutes. They said, Martin, we've seen enough. You don't need to give us an encyclopedic description of bed bugs. It's clear what's happened. And they said to me that I was so far gone on depression that I had now entered a new generalized obsessional phase. And again, medication worked really quickly. But coming back to the children, because that's what you're talking about, balancing being a parent and an adult, I was not taking care of myself. I was not effectively taking care of my relationship with my children. I was putting too much emphasis on things that didn't matter, whether or not I had the money to pay the bills or to take them on a holiday, whether or not I was progressing in life. You know what those children would have liked more than anything else? If I just spent a couple of hours sitting there with them, talking to them, asking how the day went, playing with them, instead of being on my goddamn mobile phone trying to close the next deal or, make that relationship better. So anybody who's listening to this now, who is struggling with being a single parent, please, no matter how bad it is, no matter how scared you are of the financial wolves at the door, there's no moment like this moment for making it right with your children, because what they want is your attention and your love. And if you give them that, you're on a winner.
I just wanted to say, thank you so much for sharing all that you've done there, because I think I'm really touched listening to your story, Martin, and I'm sure that other people listening to this podcast will be incredibly touched by what you've just shared. And I'm also kind of aware that talking to me with a great deal of awareness about where you've been and how things are. I'm just wondering what the turning point has been for you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The turning point, there was a few of them really. 2009, I had an amazing insight, partly thanks to, I can only describe him as a spiritual master that I had in my life. It was my best friend's father, a Nigerian man who at one time was going to be a priest, as I was. And like me, he was somebody who had rejected the faith he'd been born into, but continued to search, a seeker. And this guy used to meditate for about 2.5 to 3 hours every single morning. He was one of the most laid-back men I ever knew, very jovial man, always friendly. And whenever you said to him, "Hi, Jim, how you doing?" he would always say one or two answers, either "not too bad" or "not bad at all." Yeah, that's how he used to talk. Lovely man, wonderful man. Now, it was 2009. I was a single father. He had just lost his wife at 50 years of age due to flu. My best friend had just lost her mother. But how supportive was I? I was completely lost in the breakup of the relationship with my youngest son's mother. All I could think about was how much I wanted her in my life. Completely and utterly lost. And this man turned around and said to me, "Martin, I don't think your father ever told you that he loved you." This was an amazing eye-opener for me, because the response to just that one statement elicited was so strong, so intense. I mean, an abyss of tears came out that I knew he'd unlocked something. And I realized that I felt worthless inside, from the inside out, that I was still that child who was being emotionally and physically abused as a kid, rejected and marginalized from my siblings. And despite the fact that I'd been good in sales, good at chatting up, because I was very rarely without a woman, right? I was very good at persuading people. The fact of the matter is, I was lacking deep inside me. I was not worthy of the life that I wanted. And you know what? I was now inflicting this on my children, because they probably felt as though we're not good enough for dad's time. The next girl that he wants to chat up, they had an image of me as being a womanizer. I can tell you that now, right? I once got a girl's number in a McDonald's in front of my 12-year-old son, when he was my eldest, when he was 12. At the time, I thought, this is great. I'm showing him how it's done, and I'm showing him that confidence is key. But the other side of the coin was, for him and for my daughter, They just said all dad's interested in is women. And the more unsuccessful I was at getting the right partner, the more they just thought that I was getting them and throwing them. Perception is everything. I should have been giving them the love and the focus that I didn't get. But I was focusing in the wrong direction, thinking, if only I can get the money, if only I can buy them material things, if only I can take them on a holiday. So this realization in 2009 that I felt worthless, well, that led to me, because I'm a trained hypnotist, Matt. So not a hypnotherapist. I was taught hypnosis. So I thought, right, okay, I've got to go back inside myself and I've got to go to the root core and I've got to fix this. And so I won't go into details now unless you want me to, but I set off a number of programs. I eliminated some programs, put new ones in, and I started to transform, and everything changed. The quality of my relationships changed. I had the most amazing people coming in my life, and I changed, but I still didn't leave my full-time job. Yeah. And I still wasn't Mr. Perfect as a parent, because by that time, things had already gone pear-shaped with my eldest two children due to a process that I would say was not necessarily conscious. I think it was unconscious parental alienation from their mother. And due to my own collaboration with that process, because of the mistakes I'd made, the children were wanting to spend less time with me. That's just the way it went. My youngest son's mother was having such a hard time. He was destined to come and live with me, but wasn't living with me at that stage, okay? Coming back to the story then, I'd say that around 2007, 2008, I'd started to have a vision for self-employment. I was 37 years of age, and I was thinking, I could be writing full-time for a living. That would allow me to meditate and to go to the gym on my own terms during the day, or to go to the gym to coach people in martial arts. And I'll have autonomy, and maybe I can get my children to come and live with me more. Or maybe my youngest son can come and live with me. So that idea was germinating, but it never happened because I was still hoping to get made redundant. I felt as though my workplace had sucked the life out of me, contributed towards my divorce, contributed to, even though ultimately the choices belonged to me, Matt, I wanted redundancy. The redundancy came in 2012, as I say. And the first 2 years of that, 2012 to 2014, I did writing for people. I did a little bit of freelance sales for people. I went to meetings representing a director that I knew because he couldn't make it. Just bits here and there. As my redundancy money and my inheritance, because my mother passed away in 2012, dwindled away until the year 2014. 2014, something really, really crucial happened, and I was at a crossroads now, and I had to decide whether to go back to work or to make self-employment work for me. That's another story, but it's a relevant story. Do you want me to dive into that now?
Yeah, it'd be really good to hear it. I mean, I think you're a fantastic raconteur. I'm not having to ask questions, but I think everything you're sharing is like absolutely wonderful to hear and really interesting. So, yeah, go for it, Martin.
Great. Okay. Well, 2014. Sorry. Let me just backtrack slightly. 2013. I'd created the website for this concept that I'd had. Right. To put it briefly, without sounding like a complete lunatic, what my approach to training with martial arts weapons, while I am classically trained, I enjoy performance art and I enjoy playing with weapons. And what I've discovered as a very young child, actually, as a teenager, was that when you play with martial arts weapons, like juggling, like majorettes, like anything where you're interacting with an object, it's not about what you want. It's about how the object wants to move. You cannot argue with the laws of physics. And a lot of people don't realize this. So what you have to do is just let go and become the movement, surrender to it, feel what the universe is telling you and work with those forces for the outcome. So there isn't a doer and a done to. There's just the action happening. Yeah. And this is really philosophical, but in a nutshell, the different martial arts that I played with needed different engagement approaches, different engagement modes. So nunchaku, otherwise known as nunchucks, double baton with chain, you have to be sensitive, because when you first pick up a pair of these nunchucks, they're great fun. But if you're not sensitive to what they're giving you back, you'll very quickly smash yourself on the shin, the back of the head, the elbow, or somewhere even more sensitive, right? The 6-foot wooden bow is pick-upable for anybody. Even a woman, even an 8-stone woman can pick it up. But when you start to move it, it absorbs your power. It takes on its own mind. So if you start thinking that you can throw this around because you're big and strong, you just end up fighting with yourself. So for the 6-foot wooden staff, you've got to be feeling. So it's not just sensitive, it's surrender. You have to surrender to it and work with what you've got. With the tomfe, or the side handle baton, for anyone who's seen what used to be called the deadly nightstick, what the New York police used to use, made famous by a TV cop called T.J. Hooker. These weapons look like broken chair legs, but by relaxing and feeling where the center of gravity is, you can learn how to empower them to move as flexibly as a pair of nunchucks. So that's about empowerment. So you get where I'm coming from here. So I was already doing this as a teenager, but I'd realized in the noughties, when I was about 37, 38, I could be delivering business courses, teach them mindfulness, get them to realize that what's going on in their mind, that their will, their desires, their fears are all just parts of their psychological upmake. But as the witness, they are a step removed from those things, and they can choose how to interact rather than continually defaulting. And this is a lesson for parents, by the way. Yeah. Take the time to study transactional analysis if you haven't already. That's a different conversation. I won't go into it now. But as parents, we've got to look at ourselves and say, how should I be changing and adapting to relate to my child, rather than just getting on with your busy life? So 2014, I've now had a website up and running for a year called the aptly but terribly named Chan School of Nunchaku. Chan is a Mandarin word meaning meditation. Chan School of Nunchaku. It's May 2014. I've got £2,000 in the bank, so I'm going to have to start thinking about work. I get an email from a small company in Batley saying to me, Martin, we've just found your martial arts site. We want to hire you to run one of these seminars. So I'm like, wow, how much do I charge? Did some maths, costs, and all the rest of it. Made £500 profit for an afternoon of work. So I'm sitting there, Matt, and I know that some of your listeners who are self-employed will be thinking the same thing. I'm thinking, Martin, £500 for an afternoon, or £500 for like 10 days work in a job you hate. It's a no-brainer, but it's going to take some time to make this happen. Full-time work or following on with my dream. Thankfully, I followed on with my dream. It meant making a decision to live on credit cards for 2 years and getting into really mind-blowing debt. And I had to work on my mindset to be able to do that. I don't regret it. It cost me £20,000 in credit card debt to completely reinvent myself from washed up salesman to being a corporate and school trainer with these Chan School of Nunchaku workshops. In that time, Leon, my youngest son, came to live with me. So he's been with me now since about 2014, I think, or 15. That's wonderful. All the mistakes that I'd made with my eldest children, I've put right with my youngest son, apart from an anger management issue over mathematics, doing school.
So brilliant. I mean, there's, this story is amazing, Martin. But let's pause on that, because that's one of the things that I have been talking to other entrepreneur dads about, and their relationship with anger. It seems to me something that isn't spoken about much. And I've had my moments of enormous frustration and sometimes rage as a parent, and then felt terrible about it afterwards, and done some reflection on myself about in my relationship with anger. But I'm curious to hear your story about anger.
Yeah, it's really important, because I want to keep on remembering this is about being a parent and self-employed, as opposed to going out there, make it happen. Because, at the end of the day, we're all doing that, aren't we? Right? Yeah. So I had a number of things that would contribute to feeling frustrated and feeling angry. As I say, my specialism is mindset, Matt. So the work I was doing in schools with nunchaku and coaching, that evolved into self-protection, and in particular changing people from fearful mindset, victim mindset, to having a leadership, what I would call predator mindset. So I was giving people their natural born brutality, but the emotional intelligence to be the least likely to use it. But the irony was that while I was helping other people to deal with their issues and empowering others, including the guy that's now been with me for 5.5 years, one-to-one tuition every week religiously. I mean, I completely fixed his anger management. I had anger management issues, and it was because I wasn't aware of them. So because I grew up with such a raging father, he hit me on the head with cups, not because he intended to, just because he didn't realize he had the cup in his hand when he lost it and he slapped me. A father who grabbed me round the ears and ragged me around like a rag doll, who, when I then went to leave, he would try to kick me up the backside, and he kicked me so hard that my feet came off the ground and I felt like somebody had stabbed me up the anus. I'm sorry to be so graphic. And to be told you're the world's worst every day, and to have a man who, when he went into a rage, his face went red, and you've never seen anything so frightening. This is a man who was a former army policeman. So even though the signs were there in my 20s that I too had rage, that I too was pretty frightening if I lost my temper, I had no idea. My temper was nothing as far as I was concerned, because I'm not like my father. I'm not hitting children. I'm not hitting people. I'm not creating these arguments. And to be fair, I was with some pretty abusive women, because the psychiatrists and psychologists have now told me that I was replaying my relationship with my father through these dysfunctional relationships with women. So I simply wasn't aware I had an anger management issue, because you don't see how other parents are, right? Anyway, so fast forward. I just lost my thread there for a moment. Right. So with my eldest children, of course, there was the frustration of them not wanting to see me. There was the debt. I'd learned how to block it out of my mind, except for once a month when I would log on to move money around. That was what I called tranquilizer day. And then my son, as I say, came to live with me, and me and my youngest son, we still kiss on the lips. He's 12, yeah. We hug each other morning, during the day, spontaneously. He still wants nights, and this is an alpha male boy, yeah, leader, cock of the school, does full contact kickboxing, very balanced kid, wants to be a model, yeah. And I'm not getting in his way, right? So the relationship's very healthy. But what I started to find was when when he was struggling with maths homework, I would go into some kind of automatic pilot. It would start off with disbelief. I can't believe that he's given me this answer. He mustn't be listening. It's always him, not my fault. I'm not the one failing. He's failing. How can he not get that? Why I'm being so clear? Why is he not understanding? Then I'd start to move into sarcasm, and then I'd start to move into very unhealthy, you better start getting this right, boy, or we're going to have a real issue. You're to blame for how I'm feeling right now. It's not my fault I'm angry. I'm not going to take any responsibility. Until eventually that switch was switched, and my wonderful, loving, compassionate, emotionally intelligent little boy would be in a mess crying. And instantly, I knew what I'd done. And instantly, I would be full of remorse and doing everything I could to apologize and to fix it. Until about, wow, it must be 2 years now. About 2 years ago, he's 12 now. He just turned around. He said, Dad, no, I'm not talking to you. You do this every time. Every time we do maths, you always say you're sorry. And then you do it again. No, you're rubbish. You're crap. You're just rubbish. I don't love you. And I vowed, I could cry now, Matt. I vowed, this is not happening again. I do not want to be. This is emotional abuse. How has it happened? Yeah. And I vowed it just wasn't going to happen again. And it never did. But what I didn't realize was I still had anger issues, but not against my son. Usually driving, I'm absolutely terrible, or was. I'd be driving along, and we all know there are things that we can't control outside of ourselves. It doesn't matter. You could come back in 10 years and get on a motorway, presuming we're still allowed to drive. You will still have your middle lane hogger at 65 miles an hour. You will still have the person that drives too close to your backside. You'll still get the person who undertakes. You'll still get the person who speeds up when you go to overtake them. These things are going to happen whether you like it or not. But this idiot here that's talking to you, Matt, repeatedly in the car, and I'm sure it contributed to my type 2 diabetes, because the amount of nasty hormones that go through your body when you get stressed, I would be coming out with these expletives, describing over and over again where these other drivers were failing, until I developed a whiskey problem. And the whiskey problem wasn't being caused because of child abuse. It was just, to be honest, my eldest son, who's 19 now, who got me into drinking when he was 14. It was his party at his mum's house, and they'd all encouraged me. It wasn't my fault he was drinking cans, but he was. And he encouraged me, Dad, come on, just have a drink. So I thought, sod it. And I started drinking. But I discovered, because of a partner I had around that time, that I really liked straight whiskey. It's 40%. It's no laughing matter. And it took 5 years for it to happen. But I started to develop a tolerance, and I was getting through half a litre in one sitting. That wasn't having an effect on my relationship with my son, by the way. There was no, but I suddenly woke up one day and realized that maybe I was developing dependency. I was feeling anxious. My thinking wasn't the same, and I had what they call a permanent hangover. So I was never waking up with a banging headache. Just the quality of my mind was going downhill, spiritually, emotionally. I wasn't feeling as good. And I revisited I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous. This was around October. And they have 12 steps, which work for a lot of people. And 2 of those steps are to look at your defects, take responsibility for your defects, and ask your higher power to take them away. Well, guess what, Matt? I never had any defects because I was perfect. Why did I? It's everyone else that had the defects. So when I went to Alcoholics Anonymous in 1999, that sort of rejoined me. Just going there rejoined me with my spiritual self. And that was enough for me. But here I was now, 30 years later, realizing that I hadn't gone over those steps. And I said to myself, I'm going to deal with this anger management, and I'm going to get it sorted out. So I went to a hypnotist, and I'm going to big her up. She's called Christina Lennon, if I may. She's self-employed. She's renowned for for having a hypnotic dog on Britain's Got Talent. She's a fellow speaker like me, and I met her at the Professional Speaking Association. We became friends. So she sorted me out with a 47-minute soundtrack telling me to avoid social media arguments, because with Brexit and the election and all the rest of it, I was spending my life not being the person I wanted to be, having social media arguments, when I should have been talking or playing with my son, by the way, right? And shouting and effing and blinding in the car. Well, of course, my son, by the way, thought that was hilarious. Yeah, he will still tell you if you speak to him. There was a famous day where he was in the car, and I've turned around and said to him, "Nah, Leon, I don't have an anger management," and threw into one about another driver, and he burst out laughing at me. And so all I'll say to anybody is, who's got children, you're right to feel pressure. Whatever you're feeling on your shoulders, it's not imaginary. And all the spiritual development in the world is not going to pay the bills. But what I've discovered is happiness is self-generating. Work on being happy and mentally healthy first, and all those other problems will solve themselves. Because if you think that by solving those problems, all of a sudden you'll be a better parent, all of a sudden you'll be happier, and all of a sudden your anger management will go away, guess what? It doesn't work like that. You just spend your life constantly going for other things and problems, and you carry on having a crappy relationship with your children, and you carry on having anger management. So things completely changed for me. This is since October. I adopted a new healthy break from work. When I'm not writing, I hand paint. I don't use a roller because a roller's messy and it's not the same. I've hand painted all the walls in my house while listening to TED Talks about relaxation, about happiness. Of course, Matt, there is a disclaimer here. There's a danger if you listen to too many TED Talks that you may start talking like this, as though everything you say is important. That's all I'll say. But they're very relaxing, yeah? Very relaxing.
So
and
cool.
My life has changed, transformed. So I know I've gone on and I've really tried to tell you the story, but the bottom line here is, and I'm going to say it again, if you're a parent and you're struggling, the things that you think are going to make the difference are not going to make the difference. And your children, much as they might pester you for some more money on their online credit card, yeah, I've forgotten what they call them, to buy Roblox or whatever, right? The more they will pester you about having fast food, the more they will pester you about buying them this or that for Christmas. Actually, you can say no to those things if you're not in a position to get them. What your children really need is you to be present, for you to be happy, for you to be loving, and for you to work on yourself. Don't do what I did.
Fantastic. Martin, this has been an amazing podcast, really, just listening to you. I really want to honour your honesty and your transparency in sharing your journey. I'm so excited to have people listen to this, because I think they will be deeply moved and humbled by what you shared. So thank you for coming on. And if people want to find out more about you, where should they go and look?
Okay, you can go to my website, which is megalomaniacally named martinmorrison.me. That's www.martin, M-A-R-T-I-N, Morrison, M-O-R-R-I-S-O-N.me. I'm also on LinkedIn as /Martin J. Morrison.
Brilliant. And I'll put those links into the show notes as well. Thank you for spending time with me. I've loved it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Matt. I just want to say, normally with podcasts, I come away feeling full of regret that I went on too long and I went off in, tangents. But I've really enjoyed sharing this with you, and I think it really counts. I just hope I haven't been so honest that I get people knocking on the door saying, "You shouted at your son." But honestly, I hope it helps everyone who's listened today. Thank you very much.
I think it will, because in so many ways, but you've just shown your humanness and your vulnerability, and I think that's such a powerful way to show up in the world. So I've loved that you've done that, and I think this is going to be an absolute knockout episode. Thanks, Martin.
Thanks again, Matt. Have a wonderful day.